group, the natural gas group, we're comprised of a lot of different individuals from different departments who have been put together to come up with stronger regulations in case there is an industry identified related to shale gas. So what we have done is we put out this discussion paper and we're touring the province to 9 spots to get some info to us and to you. With us, Mark Weiss is the Executive Director of the Natural Gas Group over here. Andy Daigle, who's at the front here. Andy is a hydrogeologist with the Department of Environment. Craig Parks is a petroleum geologist with the Department of Natural Resources. David White, to my far right, was instrumental in putting together the discussion paper and can actually answer a lot of technical questions about the paper itself.
It's my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Lapierre. Dr. Lapierre has been a professor emeritus in biology at the Université de Moncton since October of 2003. At the same university, he was the holder of the Casey Irving Chair in Sustainable Development.
I'm just going to provide a brief overview of the history of the Brunswick's oil and gas industry. And then I'm going to move right into the discussion document itself that the government has released. We actually have a very long history of oil and gas in the province. It's a long history, but it's a history of actually very little development. We've had the first oil well drilled in 1859, and since that time we've had just over 300 wells drilled in the province, so not very much development. We do currently today have 2 producing fields. We have the McCully gas field, which is producing from 30 gas wells in the Sussex area, and we have 16 oil wells producing in the historic Stony Creek field south of Moncton. As well, horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracturing is also going on in the province, and we've had 49 wells hydraulically fractured since 1990 and 11 horizontal wells since 1990. So stages of gas development, and this slide really depicts how an oil and gas company would evaluate an area for its hydrocarbon potential. It's divided into 6 stages, beginning with first the identification of the resource. So actually finding out if there is potential for oil and gas in the area. So we use various exploration techniques such as seismic and drilling of a few wells to actually see if there is oil and gas. Once they've determined that, then they move into stage 2, which is the early evaluation drilling, which is actually where they're trying to determine what extent, how deep is the oil and gas reservoir. In terms of the current regulatory framework, well, here's a list of legislation that touches on all oil and gas activities in the province. I just really want to focus on 2, the Oil and Natural Gas Act and the Clean Environment Act. In terms of the discussion document itself, it is comprised of technical and environmental components of all land-based oil and gas activities. With respect to the development of the document, many sources came in the development of the document. We held a forum last June 23rd, last summer. We gathered a lot of important information there. Also, we have subject matter experts within internal to government. We've done a complete cross-jurisdictional review across North America of other oil and gas jurisdictions to see what's going on there and what their regulatory environment looks like. The document itself is divided into 12 key principles, and within that is the 116 recommendations in all. So section 1, this section addresses the seismic testing or geophysical testing, which is a very common technique used by oil and gas companies. Section 2, this section is focused on wellbore integrity, really keeping the fluids and gases within the wellbore where they belong. Section 3, the recommendations in this section are about making sure that the hydraulic fracturing operation is contained within the target rock formation in that reservoir several kilometers down. So put another way, the fractures are going where they were intended to go. Section 4, this section addresses leaks, spills, and management of waste and chemicals at the surface. So the previous sections were addressing all of the downhole or within the wellbore type things. This is addressing the surface activities. Section 5 is recommendations in this section are about monitoring aimed at protecting water, protecting surface water and protecting groundwater. Water well monitoring, pre and post seismic well testing, as well as pre and post drilling well testing. As well, monitoring of the oil and natural gas wells themselves, monitoring for things such as corrosion, leaks, and pressures within the wellhead. Section 6 is, this section is focused on water management with respect to the oil and natural gas industry as a whole. Section 7 deals with air emissions. And this is all about monitoring air emissions at the source, but also at the location locations where the emissions may be felt, so at the receptor level. And as well, the recommendations in this plan include emission reduction plans for oil and natural gas facilities. Section 8, this section is aimed at planning for public safety and emergency response. The requirements in this section are for industry to have security plans as well as emergency response plans in place. Section 9, this section addresses the protection of community and the environment. The recommendations included within this section include setbacks from natural and cultural features such as watercourses and dwellings, noise and visual impact mitigation and monitoring, as well as transportation. We know the oil and gas industry is a transportation-heavy industry. Section 10, this section addresses the financial securities and other ways of protecting landowners and then taxpayers. Section 11 focuses on ensuring all stakeholders within the province have common access to info about oil and natural gas activities occurring within the province. Section 12, this section is aimed at ensuring we have a continuously improving set of rules going forward for the oil and natural gas industry. We see the continuing use of the EIA regulation or environmental impact assessment regulation as a regulatory tool. Government introduced a profit sharing royalty that would see the province receive 40% of profits of the shale gas industry at commercial development. Now, if we had a commercial development of this industry in the province, it would be several years before significant profits were seen, just because of the very high upfront costs of this industry. With respect to the revenue sharing, the government has also announced a revenue sharing structure that would see hosting landowners receive 0.5%, and municipalities and LSEs receive 2% for oil and natural gas facilities on their property or within 25 kilometers of the municipality or LSE. The government has also announced stiffer penalties for infractions. Under this penalty structure, the maximum fine would be $1 million, which represents the strongest fine structure in North America.
Thank you very much, Craig. Just before we begin with comments, you certainly know Mr. DeMarche, but if you could, when you go to the mic, identify yourself, because we're recording all the proceedings so that we can provide a record for Dr. LaPierre at the end of the 9 meetings that we're in. So with that, the floor is yours, sir.
Dr. LaPierre, I wanted to raise a really simple concern right at the beginning. It's kind of a basic issue that affects how we can talk about anything else. Mr. Parks, in his introduction, did not once use the words shale gas. I'm concerned about the development of conventional natural gas, but what I'm really concerned about is hydrofracked shale gas. And I want to raise the question about the language that's being used. Dr. Ingrafia, at a public meeting in Moncton earlier in the year, talked about hydrofracking of shale gas as a brand new combination of technologies. We're told tonight that we've had hydrofracking here in New Brunswick since the early 90s. Well, sure, it's a long-standing technology in the oil and gas industry. And for years and years it was done to extend the lifetime of wells using very benign materials like water under pressure, liquid carbon dioxide, and so on. What Ingrafia told us in Moncton is the combination of very new technologies that's being used to hydrofrack shale dates only from 2007. It's things like the very long lateral drilling that's done. It's the multi-well pads. It's this witch's brew of chemicals, not water, not liquid carbon dioxide, stuff we were originally told a year ago can be found in our toothpaste, but which we now know includes all sorts of things that would be banned under any conventional use. So according to Ingrafia, this combination of very new and experimental technologies dates only from 2007. But the thing I want to get at, Dr. LaPierre, is this issue of simple language. The working group, I think, originally was called the Shale Gas Working Group, but the name was changed. We were certainly introduced to you as the Shale Gas Working Group a year ago. That I remember for sure. The government, whatever the motives, in the way in which language, this simple language is being manipulated, is creating the impression of trying to confuse people by changing discussion about something that's of some concern, changing the discussion from something that's of very, very deep concern to something that's of less concern. Why is the government creating this appearance of trying to confuse the issue? Why not call a spade a spade? We're concerned about hydrofracking into shale gas. Stop playing games, or at least creating the appearance of playing games, and let's have a clear, honest, open debate about what we're really concerned about.
It is complete and utter violation of our peace, our land, everything. It's a rape. It's a rape on which you are putting rules and regulations, how it should be done, that rape. We don't want it altogether. So I haven't got... I haven't got a question. I've got a suggestion. Stick your rules and regulations where the sun doesn't shine. And just stop this fracking and shale gas conversation altogether in New Brunswick. You go, pristine province, which you are here to destroy. Give us rules and regulations. Paper never saved lives. It's not going to save anybody. Here, it's embarrassing piece of information there, like what royalties landowners are going to receive. It's trying to buy out few unaware farmers out of their land and to destroy it. It's shame on you, government.
And we'll go to our next speaker. Did you want to speak? She was okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Wewena buju. Ojashko manameg and dishnikas. Wabijiji and Durham. Wabanaki and Dow. Medewewe. We are asked when we speak publicly to present ourselves in the name that was given to us by Spirit. So my name is Ojaush Komanaming. I am of the Marden clan. I am Wabanaki through my beautiful grandmother, through my beautiful father, and I am very proud of that incredible ancestry that flows through my blood. I come from both Native ancestry and French ancestry. But my elders and my heart has brought me to follow the beautiful red Medewian road of our ancestors, Native ancestors of this land. So the memory that, the ancestral memory that actually flows through my blood, my heart, my spirit, has a whole long history attached to this land in comparison to my French ancestry. What I would like to say here in the brief presentation you brought to us is I simply do not understand how water has some kind of hierarchy. Everything to us is in a circle. And that is why our people used to live in balance until this kind of development comes and knocks on the door of everybody, of any and all of our relations. I do not understand how you can replace a water source with something that was as pure and sacred as what was existing there before you fracked. I do not understand how you can replace it with that quality. Our Creator only made a certain amount of water when life was created, when Mother Earth was created. And that water to us is what carries light and what carries life. It has a memory. It has a memory since times immemorial. It has a memory since the beginning of life on the earth. And I do not understand how you can think of fracking this life. You are not only endangering the children of New Brunswick, you are also endangering the life of all children of all species. And that I really have a hard time to understand. Our hearts are really shaken and very saddened by what you are proposing here. And I pray every day to our beautiful grandfather's son as we raise that sacred water and pray and give thanks for her. I also pray that the people who are in position of making decisions will realize that in New Brunswick there is other ways to make money. And that could come from beautiful solar energy, from green projects. There has to be different ways of making money and helping the people of this province stand back up on their feet. I am so sorry that you are thinking of doing this. Beautiful sacred water. We love you. We thank you. We ask forgiveness for what the people of the earth are doing to you. We respect you. Nikanigara.
Hi, my name's Corinne Hersey, and I want to address the economic development that you're talking about, the reason we're bringing shale gas in. So as I've seen the trend in the past 8 years, specifically from the federal government, trickling on down to the provincial, is that there has been a loss of jobs. We've cut jobs from firemen, policemen, nurses, doctors, teachers, the civil sector. There's no place where people aren't losing jobs. So then we get a company comes in, foreign investment company, that says, well, we got your answer. We will come in and we'll provide shale gas jobs, and we will make New Brunswick rich. We will give landowners money, which is something that is new, of course, because that wasn't in the original offer. So you have people who are already have lost their jobs, they're poor, they've already had things taken from them and being blackmailed into taking jobs for shale gas companies. So the government says, okay, we're listening to you. We will give tough regulations and we're going to up the fines. Then you get, if it ever gets enforced, because we've seen regulations not enforced already, but if the government does decide to enforce regulations and fine a company for breaking some sort of rule or a violation, to $1 million, 500,000, 250, I really can't see these companies paying it. They're not going to just say, okay, well, we're guilty. We're going to give you the money that you fined us. So then the province gets sunk into litigation for years because we're dealing with big oil and gas companies that can keep us tied up for a very long time. So then we have a very poor province sunk into more poverty as taxpayers have to foot the legal costs of something we didn't want in the first place. There's no economic sense to bringing foreign investment companies into a province when the province can quite viably look after themselves. We need green jobs, we need jobs that puts nurses, doctors, teachers, our tourism industry. We need these jobs that put us back to work. We have to have our government stop cowering behind foreign investment, which of course is a problem because we know under NAFTA, the federal government can't say no to them. So that's a whole other kettle of fish. But we have to think seriously. You're talking about short-term economic viability is how you framed it. And there's no sense to it. There's no economic sense short-term, and there's certainly none long-term. And the government needs to think about the regulations that have already not been enforced and what the chances are that these companies are going to pay a fine.
Thank you very much. Can I get your name again? Can I just get your name again? I missed your name.
Corinne Hersey.
Corinne Hersey?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
My name is Sally McGrath, and I also would like to address the economic issues here. You've got 10% royalties, and then you've got 40% of the profits. Wow, that sounds great. But if you have a business, profits are what are left after you pay for what the costs were. Which means that these companies will be charging against that profit on paper all the costs of their exploration. Your chances of seeing anything of that 40% is exactly that. The other issue is jobs. New Brunswick is in dire straits as far as jobs go. We need jobs. But you know, last year, Tom Alexander stood on the stage in Tamus, and when he was asked about jobs, was quite upfront. The technicians would be brought in. There would be a few temporary trucking jobs when they built the installations, but that would be it. So, what are you really getting here? 10% on the top, a few jobs for 6 months, and a heck of a big bill at the end of it to clean up. This is a way of doing economic development that belongs in the third world. Is that what we are? A third world country? Because that's what we're doing. We will sell our resources at any cost for a few pennies. Well, shame on you.
My name is Tony Hutchins, and I'm a retired school teacher and an ex-MLA. I was flabbergasted when I discovered that the present government is going ahead with this procedure of putting fracking, hydrofracking in place. I've always understood I belong to the party that is now in power, and I was always of the opinion that they listened to the people before they acted. That was their promise that they made at the last election, when the Liberals were not listened to what New Brunswickers were saying. So I'm sorry to see this happening. But I want to expand a little bit of what has been excluded from this discussion. First of all, there are a number of big organizations who have come totally against the proposal that has been made. CCNB is one, University of New Brunswick is two, and if you listen to on YouTube by Dr. Anthony Ingrafe, he explains very carefully the hypocrisy that exists behind the wording of what is being proposed. And he talks about the industry would like you to believe one thing by making a statement when in fact the truth is not there. So I'm very concerned over what has been said, and you mentioned it in your discussion, that let's get to the point. Let's put an honest, true wording out front, because you're not doing it. The other thing that really bothers me, and that has not been discussed this evening or at any other organized event that I've been to, and that is the issue of healthcare. When you listen to what people go through in the communities in the States where fracking is presently occurring, the health issues that they have are astronomical. And I mean that in the sincerest sense. They're astronomical. Because when people develop cancer, that is a challenge to someone's life. And anytime someone's life is involved, money cannot buy it back. So I suggest very carefully that you listen to what has been going on in other communities. Listen to the people who have been affected, who have water coming out of their taps that has chemicals in it that are harmful to life. When you see a spring, or a stream flowing freely with trout in it, and the trout come belly up because the gases are escaping from the hydrofracking that is going on in the immediate vicinity. That is not explainable in terms of promotion or good health. The other thing that I want to bring to the attention of the Department of Environment, we talk about regulations and inspections and supervisions and all this. The question that I would have is, how many people are you hiring to be at the wellhead of each one of these wells to see that the truth is carried out? The army of people that you're going to need will certainly swallow up any royalties that you're thinking of getting, because you're going to need an army. I've watched the Department of Environment work in my community when it comes to a quarry. They couldn't manage that. I'll be honest with you. They couldn't manage that. As an MLA for that community, I had to stand up against them on a number of issues, a number of cases, because they were not following through on what was supposed to be taking place in that community. And you're going to tell me that they can monitor everything from North New Brunswick to South New Brunswick and make a good, decent job of it? I don't believe it. So let's get to the truth of the matter. This is a dangerous experiment you're going with. We are told, for example, that 40% of the chemicals that are pumped in will not come back to the surface. How long does it take for those chemicals to eventually come to the surface in another route? There are different fissures going through the earth, and these gases will escape over time. Maybe not a year after the fracking is done. But 2, 3, 5, 10 years later, those gases will come to the surface and will be detrimental to the health care of our citizens.
Fluids, Tony.
The fluids, but whatever. But the point I'm trying to make is, let's be honest with the people of this province and call a spade, because you're not doing it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchins.
Hi, Heather Whalen. I live in Lower Durham. About 6-7 months ago, a few of us went to a presentation on the economics of, they didn't say shale gas and they didn't say hydrofracking, they said natural gas in New Brunswick. And I'm sorry I mistook you. I really am. Anyways, so a couple of us went to that meeting. And at the end of it, we had some discussion. And of course, one of the questions I asked, as somebody who had moved out of the city into the country, a lot of the economics presentation was based on the economics in the city, the motels, the food, all those types of things. So my question was, from that general point of view, what is the benefit to me as somebody living in the country? And I was told that maybe someday I could build a hotel in Lower Durham. I'm dead serious. There was a couple of people there to witness that. Number one, I didn't move to Lower Durham to build a hotel. That much I can guarantee you. I moved here for peace and quiet. And there's been times, less than a week after moving into our home, we had them knocking on our door, looking to test our water. I said no repeatedly. They got my husband when I wasn't home. And they tested it, and it was clean. And they did the seismic testing, and they came back and they tested, and it was dirty. They asked me if I had an animal pooping in that general vicinity. The answer is no. My dog weighs 10 pounds, so I'm not really concerned about that. What a ridiculous thing to ask me. And I had to go through the bother and the expense and the time and the anguish of getting my water clean again, without the government ever coming back in any way, shape, or form and saying, you know what, we might be a little bit responsible for this. Just to go back to the economics of fracking and shale gas, I wonder if anybody has thought of the downside of the economics. Tony mentioned healthcare. I worked in the healthcare for 29 and a half years in addictions. With money comes addictions. Your alcoholism will go up, your drug addiction will go up, everything that goes with that will go up. And this is no reflection in a negative way of people with addictions. Been there, done that. But I'm serious. With the upside of the economics comes the downside of all that. And realistically, along with that goes prostitution, goes homelessness, goes the need for more soup kitchens. You know, we have a hard time looking after our own right now without expanding on that. And if anybody wants to go into the city of Fredericton, your addiction center is on one corner, the soup kitchen and the men's shelter is right directly across the parking lot. They keep it very contained in the city of Fredericton, which is heartbreaking that we don't even recognize and deal with these situations that we have. We're seen as a pristine city, and we're not. So it's just something I would like to throw out there. Is there any discussion on the downside of the economics of hydrofracking and shale gas, that being addictions, homelessness, and everything that goes with it? Thank you.
Thank you very much for those comments. I can assure you that you're absolutely correct, that any place, any community that gets a sudden influx of a lot of workers, a lot of new population, is going to have those kinds of problems. That's absolutely correct. And part of the framework that we've developed, or are developing, in the event that there would be an industry, and nobody knows for sure yet, it includes a community resource plan, which exactly is to what a community resource plan, and that is being worked on as part of other parts of the whole project. But you're absolutely correct in your comments. It could be more correct.
Well, Penobscot is a more complicated issue. Annie, do you want to pass that back to you?
We've actually had several questions about Penobscot and expect more. And Annie can speak a little bit to that.
Well, there's certain things, it's before the mining commissioner right now, so there's a limit to what government can say in relation to what happened there. But it is based on all of our investigations and all of the test results and the studies that have been done. There's no evidence that it has anything to do with the natural gas industry or the seismic testing that was done for the natural gas industry or the hydraulic fracturing going on in that area.
The question is, so where is the government going to take responsibility for that? That's the question.
The government did, in fact, pay to bring in a water treatment, a water supply system to the community of Penobscot. And the government did pay for that. So I think government has taken responsibility, even though it wasn't their responsibility to do so. They did bring it in to help out the residents of Penobscot.
There are many people that would tell you that in Penobscot, an interesting phenomenon is the fact that the water table is here and there's a mine right underneath it. So that's just a point that we've heard time and again too. No, I'm just saying scientifically, there's no doubt that the people of Penobscot had an issue with their water. Nobody's debating that at all.
But isn't the potash board, is that not under regulation of the government? Just as the natural gas would be as well?
At the time, the question was about regulation around the mine that was in Penobscot that's still operating there. That mine is a much older mine and was not subject to the environmental impact assessment or the EIA regulation. And so even had government found the mine to be responsible, they have not broken any of our regulations. There are specific things in the current recommendations that we've put forward, as well as the modifications to the requirements that were put forward last summer, that would prevent a similar situation from happening today. So we absolutely, through the phased EIA process, should something like that happen today, government would absolutely have recourse. So the new requirements, as they were called, that came out last summer, were developed to prevent a similar situation from happening in the future.
I'd like to offer some consecutive translation. This appears to mean that
Sir, would you go to the
anybody
microphone?
with a problem related
Sir?
to shale gas.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We are
This appears to mean that anybody with a problem with shale gas, with their wells, their houses, whatever, will receive the same sort of enthusiastic and dedicated help from the government that the people of Penobscot have had.
Avoided asking.
Go ahead.
I will yield the mic to this gentleman for 30 seconds, Mr. Coordinator.
Okay.
Yeah, Annie, the issue about Penobscot is, yeah, the government's provided,
Is it on?
well, water, but can those people sell their homes at anything resembling the market value of those homes before they lost their wells? That's the issue.
The government actually supplied water for a certain time and then actually turned around and billed them for the water. They said, we're not going to do it any longer. I've attended these sessions down there, and it's really sad.
Could you go to the mic?
I don't want to take this till
Well, you made your point. That's true.
What we're seeing in today's marketplace is that multi-billion-dollar companies are taking over a multi-million other organization, i.e. the Flake Board in St. Stephen. And the point I want to make quickly before I get into my real presentation, Dr. Lapierre, is that if a company develops an industry and over the years accumulate a liability of hundreds of millions, if not of billions of dollars. Let's say a Chinese company buys out Swin. Okay, what's to say that they won't walk away from $1 billion liability? And what are we as a government going to do to a Chinese company that had bought out Swin? That's the dilemma that I see.
Hi, my name is Giselle Gadet. I'm from Teignmouth. And before I ask my question, I do want to make a quick comment on something that the previous speaker brought up in my mind. He was talking about all these ads that CAP produces and all these, we see all that literature from the industry. We see it from the government. The Daily Gleaner flyer that came out in December or whatever. And then I think of the hundreds of people involved in these almost 30 groups of shale people working again on the shale gas issue privately. And we're working on our home printers, and your friend phones you up and says, my printer's running out of ink, you got any more ink? And that's what we're operating on. We're operating on our own pockets, out of our own money, representing thousands of New Brunswickers who are really concerned about this issue. I think my first question is fairly quick. My understanding that Swin has 1.5 million hectares, give or take a million, 1.5 million, give or take a few 100,000.
1.1 million.
1 million hectares of permit to explore. And I know that region stretches roughly from St. Stephen to the Miramichi. Is it my understanding that the public consultation meetings that are currently take place, there are none between here and St. Stephen? And if that's the case,
right.
why is that so?
That's right.
My memory's going.
Charlotte County is not on the list. No.
I don't think I
In
see.
any case, please make your point, as I'm sure we've heard what you're about to say.
My point is
Please.
that that is a fairly large area that has a permit to explore that I don't see any public consultation meetings happening, and I'm wondering why that is. I think they're being very underrepresented.
Point taken. And
Okay.
we've heard several other people who have asked that we go to other areas as well.
Thank you. Another question that I have is around something you mentioned in your presentation around public disclosure. And my concern is, if this does go ahead, and I will hope it doesn't, when would we know where and when exploration would take place? And if you're saying is we're going to have public disclosure, I want complete disclosure. I want to know the day and I want to know where. Unlike what we experienced in Tamos last summer, when one morning you get up and you look out and there's a mark in front of your house on the road where there's going to be a seismic testing within a few days. So is this public disclosure you're talking about as complete as you suggested it might be?
I think you're making probably a suggestion that I'm not sure is even and that's the purpose of these meetings, is perhaps that is a suggestion that Dr. Lapierre would put forward in his report.
I appreciate that.
David has a comment.
Sorry. I'd just like to point out, it is mentioned in the discussion document, and it's something, frankly, that, you know, a little bit surprised me in terms of the notification. We didn't go back into the seismic. You're talking about, when you say exploration, you're referring to seismic testing?
Seismic exploration with the thumper trucks or the dynamite or whatever they choose to use.
We're recommending that there be, we're calling it prescribed radius, where there'd be a mandatory public disclosure before that takes place, and that is a recommendation in the discussion document.
So exact details of when and where, and lots of lead time too, not just the day
and
before.
That's the kind of detail we need to hear, because in this discussion document, it's a general, I guess you'd call it a concept, but we don't have the detail behind it. And if we can get the kind of detail we need to have.
We need some of these. Okay.
Yeah, we need to know, sorry, what
would you recommend, and what would you like to see in terms of?
Well,
that's
first
the
of all,
kind of thing that we
let it be known I don't want it to happen, period. But
But if it's going to happen.
But if it's going to happen, I would like to see the public, the people in the community know at least a month in advance of when, what day, and exactly where. And I also mean if there's going to be an exploratory well, because something has always bothered me that if there was going to be an exploratory well drilled by SWIN or any other industry, that we would never know exactly where that was going to take place prior to it actually being drilled.
That's a good point, and actually you would, because they do have to, even for the exploratory wells that they will be proposing in the future, they are required to go through the EIA process currently, so they'll have to register that project, and so there would be notification for that absolutely.
And how would the notification take place?
I don't have all the details of that, but that would be through the EIA process. So again, these are the types of things that if people can submit written comments of what you'd like to see, what you think is appropriate notification, those are exactly the types of things that we really, really want to hear about.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time. I would probably have a lot more questions, but there's people behind me.
Well, look, I'll tell you what, when we go through, if you want to come back again, you're more than welcome to.
Thank you.
Good
job, sir.
Sir?
Good job.